Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink and another set of cards today. I wanted to do some experimenting and also to create with some of the new products from the Simon Says Stamp Sending Sunshine release. So to start off with, I have some Canson XL watercolor paper here, and I started cutting it down to about 6 inches by 4 3/4. I wanted my pieces to be a little bit bigger than A2 card fronts because I was going to tape them down. And for my first 2 pieces, I'm just taping down the watercolor paper to a hardboard here using my washi tape. And I'm going to do some experimenting with color burst, the Tonic Shimmer powders. I did a video not too long ago playing around with these and a heat emboss background. And I just wanted to do some more experimenting. So for my first 2 backgrounds, it's just watercolor paper. There's been no stamping or anything. And I wet it first because I was curious to see what would happen. So I've heavily wet this. Like, I sprayed it with water. I used one of my flat paint brushes and just made sure the paper was really, really wet. And then I'm just sprinkling the shimmer powders onto it. Now, I just got my hands on the 3 that I used on the left. That's the Atlantis Burst, the Blue Blitz, and the Violet Brocade. And I was kind of like, none of this is working. Using them, like sprinkling them onto a wet surface, you can see they don't really do a whole lot. So I started moving things around with my paintbrush. I was sopping up the excess water that was, of course, pooling everywhere because there's a ton of water on here. And it ended up working. It looks like a hot mess. Once it's dry, though, I still end up with a shimmery, very random background. That is something I struggle with, is just letting things do their own thing, letting them be random, and especially trying to create watercolor backgrounds. I'm very much a control freak. So once this was dry, though, I was quite happy with it. It's just, like I said, very random, shimmery. I'm going to work with it. So I set those aside. And then for my next 2 backgrounds, I'm using 2 of the new background stamps from Simon Says Stamp. So I've got my travel stamp platform here, and I flipped the lid around so it's for the rubber stamps. And I've put the background stamp onto the lid, and then I have these pieces of watercolor paper. And I'm using my anti-static powder tool very liberally on the watercolor paper, and then I'm inking up the stamp with Simon's clear embossing ink. And first I'm bringing the paper to the stamp, and then just using my hands, which is what I normally do. And then I'm going to close the platform backwards onto that paper, and now I can flip it over and really press down and get a good, perfect image. So press down really, really well, and then I'm going to coat this with Simon's white detail embossing powder. I've said this quite a few times in recent videos. This is like my go-to combo, and I really like Simon's white detail embossing powder, and it's perfect for these background stamps because there is a lot of detail to them. So once I've got everything coated and the excess tapped off, I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. It doesn't really look like much at the moment. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the second background, which is the Bohemian lace background. So did the exact same steps, melted it with my heat tool, and then I'm going to tape both of these to my hardboard with washi tape. And this time I'm sprinkling the powder on to the dry surface, and I'm not squeezing the bottles. I said this in my last video when I used these powders. Do not squeeze the bottle. It will literally burst out of the bottle. You'll end up with this pile of powder. So I'm just literally tapping my fingernail against the bottle and just sprinkling it. You don't need much. So I've just got very light little sprinkles here, and then I'm going to spray it with water. And this is where the magic really happens. Now you can see that's where the fun really is with these. And again, normally I could leave well enough alone and just let these dry and they would look gorgeous, but I can't. I have to play with them. So I ended up spending way more time on these backgrounds. Looking at it now, you don't notice it as much, but looking at it as I'm editing, I could have just left them from the beginning and just let them dry and they would have been perfect. But I was fiddling and messing around and ended up getting the same result, but it took me a lot longer because I'm fiddling and sopping up the excess and then adding more powder, etc., etc. But still fun. So I sprinkled on more to kind of fill in. I really wanted to like fill in the areas. I really didn't want any white areas because of the detail of these background stamps. I wanted there to be a lot of color. So I kind of would sprinkle on the color. I sprayed a little bit of water. I would end up sopping up some of the excess with a paper towel. And then I would use my wet paintbrush to kind of tap into those powders and activate them, because I don't like leaving the powders, like if there's like a concentration of the powders that haven't been activated by the water, if those are left behind, those can smear off because they haven't been activated. So I did all the fiddling, and it's amazing how much it changes from wet to dry. So after everything's completely dry, I had die cut all these pieces with the largest of the Simon basic rectangle dies. And now I've got these gorgeous like shimmery backgrounds, 2 of them just plain, like no heat embossing or anything, and then 2 with the embossed sentiments. So to start actually creating cards out of all of these, I did a ton of die cutting with a bunch of the new wafer dies. So this first one is the summertime wafer die, and I stacked 3 layers of it of just white cardstock together, and then I topped it with Simon's, this is the Citron yellow glitter paper. So stack that on top, and I was just using Gina K Connect glue to stack all those together. And then I'm going to adhere this to the background that I had done with like the pinks and yellows. So I'm going to adhere that into place, and I'm going to stack some acrylic blocks on top of that to hold it down flat so that it will adhere really well to this watercolor paper background. So for that one, set it aside, I'm going to let it dry. And then for my second watercolor, random background, I'm using the new MARILYN full card wafer die, which is just, it's fabulous. So I die cut this 3 times from white cardstock, and then I'm just adding little dabs of the same adhesive to this, stacked all 3 layers together. Then I flipped it over, put more adhesive on the back, and then I'm going to line this up on top of that background. And since the background was cut down with that large Simon rectangle wafer die, they're all the exact same size. It's all 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it all just lines up really easily. So I've got both of these now with their die cuts. And then I did the same thing with the You Are My Sunshine wafer die and the Summer wafer die from the 4 Seasons die set. I had stacked them all with 3 layers of cardstock, which took a little bit of time doing this many die cuts. But I just kind of zoned out, listened to music, stacked them all together. And then I topped the You Are My Sunshine with that same Citron yellow glitter paper, which on camera, like on the video, doesn't really look like much, but in person, when the light catches it, it's just this, gorgeous yellow sparkly fabulousness. So I used my T-square ruler on this one to line up the word sunshine here so that it is straight on my card. And then I just kind of hold it in place for a few seconds so that the glue has a chance to set. So once I've got that straight, I can then adhere the rest of the die cut words above it to complete my little sentiment here. So, and I did the same thing when I adhered the word summer to the other card front. I used my T-square ruler, got it straight, then I was good to go. And then to complete all these sentiments, I stamped and heat embossed sentiments from the 4 Seasons Sayings stamp set. And I just heat embossed them onto, I used the Is Coming sentiment on black cardstock, so it'll say summer is coming. And then I also die cut the word summer again, but this time just from some black glitter paper. And I'd adhere that just flat to that background because it was already stacked up so much. I didn't feel like adding a ton more dimension with that die cut. Plus I was kind of tired of doing that many die cuts. Amy got a little bit lazy there, but I adhered to all those flat. And then I had also stamped and heat embossed one more sentiment that says, I completely heart, onto some dull pink cardstock, and then I adhered that to my summertime background. So now I've got all of my, die cutting done. My backgrounds are done. I've got 4 heavyweight white cardstock card bases that are all A2 sized. So all of these backgrounds will completely cover the card base. So I just used my Xyron Mega Runner to add adhesive to the back of all of these backgrounds and adhered each of them to the card base. So once I have everything adhered, I wanted to finish the insides, of course. And I couldn't resist pulling out the Playful Messages stamp set that just was released as well. I got a kick out of all these snarky sentiments. They're so funny. So I had to use them. They just had to do it. So I pulled out sentiments, one for each card, just having fun with it. And then I'm inking up the sentiments with different colors of Simon's inks. So this one I'm using Doll Pink ink, and it says I'm obsessed with you in a non-creepy way. And then I'm using Clementine ink for this sentiment. And this is the one that says, turns out I like you more than I originally planned. So stamp that one. And then I am using Deep Purple ink for the next one. This is just says, you're my favorite person. And I stamp that one. And then for my final sentiment, I'm stamping the I miss your face. I love that one. And I'm stamping that with Scuba ink. So once I've got the inside stamped, I have to add just one last embellishment. You know, I got all the shimmer going on with the background, the heat embossing and everything. So I didn't want to go totally overboard. So I just pulled out some Simon sequin mixes. I've got the Caribbean Sunset and Pixie Dust. This is the Pixie Dust. And I just poured it into my little magic tray here and kind of sprinkled them fairly liberally on the first card here. And I'm just adhering them into place with Simon's Craft Tacky Glue and just using my jewel picker to pick up the sequins and adhering those into place. And then the one with the MARILYN full card background, I just added little dabs of glue to certain areas of the die cut there. And this one I just adhered some of the little star and some of the little clear sequins from that Pixie Dust mix. And then when I was going through my stash, there's the Caribbean Sunset mix, which is the perfect color combo for these backgrounds. So same thing, sprinkled it rather liberally onto these cards and then adhered them into place with the Craft Tacky Glue and my jewel picker. And that's going to finish off all of these cards. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post. I'll have links to all the supplies used. Definitely check out my blog post because I am participating in a hop with a bunch of other fabulous designers. This is actually day 2 of the hops, so I will have a link to day 1. Tons of inspiration, tons of videos, tons of blog posts. There's giveaways on every single blog post on the hop. I have a coupon code, all kinds of fun things. So definitely check out my blog post. It'll be the first link in the description box below the video, as well as I'll have, links to everything I used and pictures on my blog, etc. So thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.